Behold the God of Thunder!
Hello, Rivals fans, and welcome back to the Rivals Report, the show that gets you up to speed on Rivals esports news in a nice, bite-sized package. My name is Diatonic, and this is the Rivals Report number 22 for the week of October 27th, 2025. On this week's report, get ready for DreamHack Atlanta with the second half of our pre-LAN coverage featuring the qualified teams from EMEA, China, and Oceania. Plus, Rivals pros and content creators came together for a good cause as the Daredevil Charity Tournament heads to NA. And the Collegiate Rivals Series brought some banger matches to the broadcast in weeks 3 and 4, and we've got some highlights for you. But before we get started this week, I have some announcements regarding the Rivals Report schedule over the next couple of weeks. The Atlanta LAN Rivals Report special won't be releasing on Monday, November 3rd, as would be our regular release schedule, since we'll just be getting back from DreamHack that day. Instead, the Rivals Report number 23 will release on Friday, November 7th. The Rivals Report will take the following week off, and Rivals Report 24 will then release on Monday, November 17th, and get us back to our usual schedule of Monday releases. Now, without further ado, on to the LAN coverage. It's hard to believe that as of the uploading of this Rivals Report, we're just a few days away from the start of LAN action at DreamHack Atlanta. Last week, we brought you team profiles on the NA and Asia competitors. So this week, we're continuing our pre-Atlanta coverage by profiling the remaining 6 teams, the competitors from EMEA, China, and Oceania. We're kicking off that coverage by previewing what many consider to be the deadliest region in all of Marvel Rivals, EMEA. 3 teams qualified for LAN out of the EMEA region, so it would make sense to begin with the Stage 2 champions Virtus Pro. VP are a household name in the EMEA region, having won almost every single official competitive event they've entered, save for Ignite Stage 1 where they placed 3rd and barely missed the mid-season finals. In fact, they had an undefeated streak from the time they entered the Marvel Rivals Invitational until Rad defeated them during Stage 1 of Ignite. Their roster has remained the same since the team's creation, making them one of the most consistent lineups in the entire game. And that may be one of their greatest strengths, as they're one of the few squads that haven't seen a lot of roster movement. They're a deadly team, especially when it comes to ult management and capitalizing on momentum, but teams can disrupt their flow with a heavy focus on targeted bans. Plus, they've yet to be truly tested on the global stage, so time will tell if their dominance will hold up on LAN. Next up, we're checking in on the Stage 2 runners-up Citadel Gaming. This org's first foray was actually into the Americas region back in May, but everything changed for them in July when they signed the faction formerly known as Berber Patapim, winners of the Chronovium Cup and Ignite Stage 1 in EMEA. They'd go on to clock a solid top 4 performance at the mid-season finals, and of course most recently finished second to VP in Ignite Stage 2. This roster has also largely stayed together since their Berber days, though they recently added Melio, formerly of Rad Esports, to their ranks. Citadel is an extremely balanced team, with incredibly talented players, practically stars in every role. This team shocked the system when they first started picking up big wins, but that drew a lot of scrutiny, and now many teams are more prepared for them than ever. They still seem to have difficulty against global opponents as well, struggling against the likes of Envy and Sentinels at mid-season finals, but Citadel is still a team to be feared. And rounding out the EMEA region, we're taking a look at the mid-season finals champion and legendary European esports org Navi. Navi have gone through a couple of coats of paint over time, being known as Rad Esports at the time of their MSF win, and even further back being known as Team 1. But Ignite Stage 2 was their first outing under the Navi banner, claiming the last LAN invite for themselves, but placing 3rd after being defeated by Virtus Pro. They mostly maintained the same core, though Sestroid and Melio have since left the team and been swapped for Crisis and Jerky. Those swaps left them looking a little bit shaky in Stage 2, but the new members seem to be adapting well. They of course enter the Grand Finals tournament with a champion pedigree, and now with the backing of an even bigger org, their access to resources has likely skyrocketed. Plus, like with Citadel, their core is incredibly well known now, and they're going to have to innovate to stay ahead of the curve this time around. But they'll no doubt be in contention for a top spot at DreamHack. China has been a bit difficult to get much intel on, but the team that's emerged as one of the most dominant there has to be OUG. They first came onto the scene for the Marvel Rivals Invitational, where they won without dropping a single map through the playoff bracket. They'd quickly build up their trophy case, taking home first place in the Season 1 MRC, as well as Ignite Stage 1 and Stage 2, though they'd finish in the middle of the pack at mid-season finals. They lost Ganbei and Hetlot just before Stage 2, though most of their core would remain, such as Taro Cookie and the Ace of the Skies Molan Ron. They're masters of tempo, able to command matches like a professional maestro if they can keep control. They even have some ability to keep up with international teams, having pushed 100 Thieves back during the MSF. It does seem like they struggle on some of the more common competitive map picks, having been dominated on maps like Hall of Djalia and Hell's Heaven. But many feel this team has some serious competitive potential, and we can't wait to see what they've been cooking up. A relative newcomer to the Ignite scene comes in the form of the China Stage 2 runners-up, Iconics. They first entered the Ignite space by defeating Team Try Again in the second split of open qualifiers, and went on to win the Season 3 China MRC just before the start of Stage 2. They blazed a trail of destruction throughout the stage, having picked up former OUG player Hetline. But OUG themselves have been the bane of this team's existence, being defeated by them twice during the playoffs. This team is truly a dark horse in this tournament, and very likely capable of taking some top teams by surprise, since there's just not much info out there about them. However, questions of their ability to perform on the international stage and how they'll handle the pressures of LAN are what Iconics will have to answer if they want to rise above in this tournament. And finally, to round out our pre-LAN coverage, let's look at the lone representative of Oceania, ChopperMag. ChopperMag are the team that formerly played for Ground Zero Gaming, having dominated OCE Stage 1 and qualified for the mid-season finals. But after a top 6 performance on LAN, the roster parted ways with the org and struck back out on their own as ChopperMag. But this team is a serious force to be reckoned with, having devastated nearly every team in the OCE region during Stage 2. This is another team that's mostly stuck together even after leaving GZ behind, so they do enter with that advantage at their backs. They have some incredibly strong individual players as well, though they do seem more comfortable sticking to their usual picks and less likely to go out on a limb for the sake of a counter. They also have trouble battling back when caught on the back foot, but no doubt they're ready to prove themselves again, this time on an even bigger stage. And that wraps up our team coverage ahead of Grand Finals in Atlanta. The group stage of the tournament starts today, and day 1 should be wrapped up by the time you're seeing this report. As mentioned at the start of this episode, we'll have a full breakdown of the Grand Finals for you in a special Rivals report coming out next Friday, November 7th. And we'll be on site throughout the entirety of DreamHack Atlanta, so feel free to come up and say hello. Last week on the Rivals Report, we brought you coverage of a Daredevil Charity Tournament hosted by Rivals streamer Team Captain, featuring a roster of EMEA content creators and pros. They came together for some friendly competition and the opportunity to raise funds for C International, an organization dedicated to fighting preventable blindness. Well, this past week, the NA branch of the tournament was run, featuring creators and pros from both the Americas and EMEA regions. I was in the booth alongside CB, Keg, and Vaudable, bringing you all the action from this tournament featuring the Man Without Fear. To recap, this tournament was run very similarly to the Boger Bash. 8 creators and pros were selected to be the team captains, and they started off the night by duking it out in a Doom match. All 8 players were forced to use Daredevil, and placements in the Doom match were used to determine captain draft order. Once the free-for-all was completed, the captains all took turns drafting players from a pool until they had a full squad. There were some road bumps involving missing players, and some additional competitors were called in as ringers at the 11th hour, but they were able to find enough players to fill and fire off the tournament. The night opened up with a banger of a match, as Team Super Gomez, led by the former Sentinels player, went up against Team Mace, led by the Vanguard player from Dreamland. Mace's team brought together the likes of Fraud from Dark Zero, Light formerly of FlyQuest, fellow Dreamland teammate Valentina Eve, and players Cleo and Snake Case. Gomez's team was packing some big names as well, drafting Imperator of Foot Esports.
Wait, Gomez pick me, Gomez pick me, Gomez pick me, Gomez pick me, Gomez pick me. Pick me if you want to win.
And several other well-known names like Eating Pizza Right Now, Doki Bird, Jimbo Limbo, and Insanity. Team Mace would manage to close out this series 2-0, but Team Gomez was never too far behind on either map. But Team Mace managed to win out in the end and survive their first round in this single elimination bracket. And while those two were duking it out in the first round, Team Z-Cube was up against Team CC, with both squads packing stacked rosters as well. But this match would belong to Team Z-Cube, the team that would eventually become known as the Z-Devils over the course of this tournament. Z-Cube rebuilt a large part of the Dreamland core for his team, drafting Arso, Chuckles, and Chime. He called on Vobendo and Sovio as well, and that squad was able to secure a decisive 2-0 win against Team CC, sending them on to the next round. And it'd be those two teams, Team Mace and the Z-Devils, squaring off in the final round of the tournament. First up for that final series would be Celestial Husk, and it was truly a battle of a swinging pendulum here. Both teams were evenly matched on point 1, ending in a 99-99 overtime battle that Team Mace would win. The Z-Devils regained some control on the second point, holding Team Mace under half capture progress before they won the point. But Team Mace would ultimately make a comeback on the final point, taking map 1 and themselves to tournament point. Araco was on the docket for map 2, with Team Mace on offense first. It would be an absolute slog for Mace and company, but they managed to drag the payload over the finish line in overtime. The Z-Devils struggled after halftime, being taken to task by Mace himself on Angela alongside Snake Case, and not to mention Light cooking on the Man Without Fear himself. It was too much pressure, and the Z-Devils would crumble under a Team Mace full hold. In total, both the NA and EMEA Daredevil Charity Tournaments managed to raise more than $1,700 for C International, a group effort that gave us some solid Rivals action, all for a good cause. While there were some logistical challenges to overcome in running this event, it's still encouraging to see it run. Every bit of effort counts in supporting a charity like this, and whether you played, broadcasted, or just viewed the event, you helped contribute to those efforts. There's very likely more events to come in the future from this crew, so stay tuned. Well, the Collegiate Rivals Series marches on as well, with the league reaching the halfway point of the Swiss phase for their fall split. The field of competition is slowly settling as the weeks pass, and we're starting to see closer and closer matches between these collegiate squads, especially on the broadcast. I've been in the booth with Soren, Rizzy, and Mega Ninja to bring you all the action, and we're here to catch you up on what you may have missed. In the first Week 3 matchup, we had an absolute banger as the league's #1 seed Indiana Tech took on the #2 seed Nebraska. From the get-go, it seemed like we may have had an upset on our hands as Nebraska handily took Map 1. But Indiana Tech would find some serious momentum heading into Celestial Husk for Map 2, driven to some degree by P. Dougie and his Venom plays. That took us to Map 3 for this clash, finishing things off on Symbiotic Surface. Nebraska made some serious progress on offense first, nearly completing the map before being stopped. But they didn't create quite enough distance to save themselves, and Indiana Tech would eventually overtake them with a 2-1 overall win. Carleton and Clemson were up next to the plate here, kicking things off on Spider Islands first. Clemson had some trouble with the Carleton defense, being stopped just after the halfway point of the map before halftime. Carleton came out the gate swinging when they took the reins, blazing through Clemson with around 3 minutes still on the clock to win Map 1. We headed for Wakanda next as Clemson selected Hall of Djalia for Map 2, but this map would actually end in a draw. Both teams cleared it and went to extra rounds, but neither side was able to make any progress, so Hall of Djalia was a wash. Next up was Yggdrasil Path for even more convoy action. Carleton were stopped just short of checkpoint 2 on this one, and Clemson would swoop in after halftime to seal the deal. After a long, grueling set between these two, it'd all be decided on a Rocco. Carleton cleared this one under overtime and absolutely battled back on defense to hold Clemson at just the last few meters. It was a nail-biter, but the Carleton defense would grit their teeth and lock it in, bringing home the win. On to Week 4 next, and the halfway point of the Swiss stage of the split. We had the UT Thunderbolts taking on Cal Poly Pomona's Galactic squad in the first match of the day. CPP Galactic would opt for some pretty interesting comp choices as we headed into Spider Islands, rocking only a single Vanguard for most of the match. They'd battled it out under overtime several times, but they had more than enough to hold the Thunderbolts and win Map 1. The Thunderbolts took us to Hall of Djalia for Map 2, and though CPP Galactic would nearly complete the map, UTTB battled back hard here, plowing through the defense and making it a 1-1 series. Hirako was the decider for this series, and the Thunderbolts were stopped heartbreakingly close to checkpoint 3. Fortunately for them, it wouldn't stop them from taking the map, as CPP Galactic were held up by the Thunderbolts' defense before checkpoint 2. For the final match of this collegiate catch-up, we have powerhouse team Georgia Tech taking on Cal Berkeley. Hall of Djalia was up first, and this was a dominant performance from Georgia Tech, holding Cal to 0 progress on checkpoint 1 and a swift 57-second offense for Georgia to take the lead. But we'd see a different team from Berkeley on Krakoa as they were able to battle back and take this map in a 2-1 war here. That would bring us all the way to Yggdrasil Path for the decider. Berkeley got caught up in the run-up to checkpoint 3, leaving the door to victory open for Georgia Tech. Georgia would lock in an edge-of-your-seat offense here, culminating in a final battle just inches away from winning the series. But GT couldn't find the breakthrough, and Cal Berkeley would take down Georgia. We're now halfway through the Swiss stage of the CRS, with all teams vying to be in the top half of the field to advance to playoffs. We've had some wild matches in those few short weeks, and as the competition field continues to settle, it's bound to only get even closer. Be sure to check out the Collegiate Rivals Series on Twitch every Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern for more collegiate action. Well, that's all for this week's Rivals Report. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on the latest in Marvel Rivals Esports. And be sure to follow me on other platforms including Twitch, X, and TikTok. I've been Diatonic, you've been amazing, and I'll see you in-game.